welcome to Paranormal Kativity. Tonight I'm going to talk about the Enfield poltergeist, also sometimes called the Enfield Haunting. Now, whenever I posted about the Enfield horror, that took place in the central part of the United States, and a lot of you clicked on it thinking it was this story, so I thought, why not share this one too? This story took place in the mid-70s in Enfield, which is in North London in England, and it's a story of a mom and her 4 kids in a house. The claims by this family are insane, and it started out where the kids were saying their beds were wobbling up off the floor and that furniture was moving in their rooms. So the mom goes in the bedroom to see what they're talking about and witnesses a dresser moving across the floor, almost as if it's trying to block them all into the room. And no matter what she's doing, she can't get it to move, aside from where it moves on its own. So she calls police and files a report, and then over time they end up having all kinds of different paranormal investigators and researchers, people just investigating the home and the living conditions for the family's sake, and nobody ever really figured out what was the cause of the furniture moving, because that happened in front of multiple witnesses multiple times. So in addition to the furniture, I know they talked about Legos and shirts and other things coming from one side of the room and being flown across the room, right in front of people or next to people. They also talked about water phantomly appearing throughout the house for no real reason. The knocking on the walls was really interesting because instead of it just like knocking a response, it would knock and sound like it was coming from one side of the wall and going to the other side of the wall and like weaving through the wall as it went across the wall. Some of the objects in the house would randomly become too hot to hold with no cause. There were cold spots and cold breezes throughout the house, and there were even stories of matches spontaneously lighting on their own. One daughter in particular had a lot of activity surrounding her, but all of the family experienced some type of physical assault. Usually it was in the form of being pushed or pulled out of bed or being held in place by unseen forces. Now the kids themselves were a center of a lot of attention throughout this. Some people say that they were witnessed bending spoons, which is an ability that I'm going to be going into full detail in another video because I've heard some amazing stories regarding that as well. However, the one daughter, Janet, in particular, went through a lot of things that could be considered possession. According to her, there was a man who was able to communicate through her and sometimes her sister in the form of voice manipulation. His name was Bill Wilkins, and he died in the house years before. Supposedly, a lot of the things that she said as Bill were verified through Bill's remaining living relatives as being factual. What is weird, though, is most of the time whenever they were speaking through Bill's voice, it was behind closed doors. Later on, further tests were done, and supposedly she was able to still create this voice with water in her mouth and under other forms of testing to kind of try and debunk it, but a lot of people feel like what was said as Bill was more in the form of ventriloquism or other types of voice manipulation that humans have the ability to do. According to Janet, she held true up until recent years that everything that was experienced was legitimate, and that whenever she would go into these spells, she would have no memory of them. Now there are photographs that are often classified as evidence of her being possessed and being thrown around the room. I had seen these pictures before, and I never knew why there were pictures coming up in searches of strange phenomena of just a girl jumping on her bed. It really truly just looks like a picture I could recreate, or pretty much anybody else. But according to her, she was in a state where she had no memory of it happening. She didn't even know when these photos were taken, and it really disturbed her. And a lot of people felt like maybe the family just created a hoax, and all of them were really good with ventriloquism and could kind of make these sounds and phantom noises and voices by themselves. And while Janet did come forward and say 2% of the voices of Bill were faked, a lot of people think more than that could be true. And it's said that the mom was witnessed using things to make noises in other rooms when people were doing investigations. But then there's stories of people bringing in their equipment and it stops working. They take it out of the house and like little bits of mechanic equipment like screws and things were bent in ways they should not have been, and that's why it was broken. So there's still some weird activity that they couldn't have been able to do, But at the same time, were they enhancing the experience of people while they were there? If it was for money, that didn't work out because none of them made money off of it. And they actually did not like the fact that people were making movies and books and things based on their story. The most popular one being The Conjuring 2, which came out just recently. After all of this occurred, it seemed like the family kind of just had bad luck from years on out from there. So it's not like they really benefited from this situation, and a lot of the kids experienced severe bullying after people knew who they were. And the house itself, the next tenants of the house after they left, said that they always felt like they were being watched and there was definitely some type of presence in the home, and they only ended up staying for 2 months. Now currently, from what I was able to tell, the family that resides there now doesn't experience any activity. Now they do have children, and they haven't told the children anything about what was happening there in past years, so the kids haven't experienced anything on their own, and the parents are just keeping that from them to make sure that they don't kind of manifest it or overthink it. So while lots of people think that this entire thing was a hoax, the furniture is the most interesting to me, and the objects moving, because all of these people witnessed this, and people were in the house actively looking for like strings or wires or something that could be moving this furniture, and no one ever found anything. So that alone is amazing to be able to witness. And I'm just curious to know if you guys had heard of this story, if you've heard any other rumors or theories as to what happened, if you think it's a hoax, if you think it was real. I'm just curious to know, because online it's almost 50-50 from what I was researching, of people who really think it was one of the most notable, largest cases of poltergeist and possession activity ever recorded, especially for being more recent, like in the 70s where we had the technology to document it. And then the other half are just like, this is phony, this is why. So maybe do some further research too if you're not super familiar with this case, and form your own opinion. I'm not really sure. I kind of feel like the more personal things, like the voices coming out of her and her being thrown around the room, I really don't know if those are real, because at least the photographic evidence I don't buy. And a lot of people do have abilities with their vocal cords that could make other voices or other sounds, so I just don't think that that necessarily was a real experience, but it could have been. I'm not sure, I wasn't there. Now the furniture, I at least hope that it really is an actual instance of poltergeist activity, because I think poltergeist activity is one of the coolest things ever. So I will continue to hope and dream that that actually occurred. But yes, please do tell me your thoughts. I really can't wait to read them. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications. That way you get notified every time I make an upload. I'm Kat, and this is Paranormal Kativity. Have a strange day. Bye!